Barevdes, thank you for joining us today, my brothers and sisters. My name is Kahren Eloyan. I'd like to first take a moment to acknowledge both our fallen ancestors as well as our martyrs from both wars for Artsakh. May God forever look out for our lost brothers and sisters. May they find eternal peace and dignity in the great beyond. May we honor them always and ensure that their sufferings and sacrifice pave the way for a brighter future for Armenia. I want to start with two personal stories. My grandmother's uncle was named Tigran Melkonyan. He was born to a name and to a family that time forgot. At age 5, Tigran watched Ottoman gendarmes torture his grandfather to death and butcher his family. Narrowly escaping death, Tigran was marched towards the killing fields at Deir Zor a few weeks later. Somehow, the orphan boy, who'd forgotten his own name, ended up in an orphanage run by the Melkonyan brothers in Cyprus. Immediately sensing the boy's intellect and talent, the Melkonyans took the boy in as their own and christened him Tigran. Tigran distinguished himself and built a life of deep intelligence, ceaseless self-improvement, and service to his people. From the rubble, a stubborn little child grew into a quiet hero who lived a life of dignity in spite of unspeakable trauma. The second story is of my namesake and my great-grandfather, Kahren Eloyan. Unlike Tigran, both of us are blessed to know our names and where we came from. But as they did for Tigran in 1915, the winds of misfortune blew into a hurricane for Kahren in 1918. On the 21st of May of that year, Kahren, then only 13 years old, heeded the bells that rang before the Battle of Sardarapat. As the murderous columns of the 16,000-strong enemy army bore down on what remained of Armenia, Kahren and the 9,000 heroes of Sardarapat dug in for their last stand. They knew the stakes. Our very right to freedom from annihilation was on the line. Thankfully, our national stubbornness prevailed in the following days, and my great-grandfather and our forebears mightily repaid our murderers at Sardarapat. Amid the days-long volleys of bullets and artillery, Kahren sprinted from position to position through the most dangerous swaths of the front to deliver water, ammunition, and medicine to the fighters. After this immense display of grit and perseverance, Kahren became a civil engineer in Yerevan. He too constructed a successful life of dignity and strength. Tigran and Kahren both learned that there is life after calamity. They both looked to the future beyond their sufferings and constructed new lives for themselves and for their countrymen. It is an understatement that April 24th this year takes on special significance for us. Our traumas are no longer the distant echoes of our ancestors' wails. They've become our cries of anguish and of rage. It seems that again we're near the precipice of annihilation, our statehood again precarious and in doubt. We are distrustful, angry, and grieving. I struggled with what to say in light of all of this. That we all wake up each day with a dark sense of portent is known to every Armenian here. I wish not to harp on what's already self-evident, nor do I want to repeat platitudes. Instead, I wish to try and find a mantra and a way forward. There is life after calamity. Of course, in the wake of our loss, it behooves us to examine and understand the causes of the war. But it's my conviction that fixating exclusively on it is a grave mistake we cannot afford. There are wars yet to be fought. To allow the enemy's provocations to break our spirit anymore is fatal. To look at the enemy's fascist aspirations and aggressions and conclude that our final days are near is meaningless. I believe in examining the historical record, a more powerful conclusion can be reached. The Armenian people have existed for about 7,000 years, potentially more by some estimates. In that time, our people have seen myriad great powers rise and fall, many of which had designs of destroying us too. And for much of those 7,000 years, Armenians endured without a state of their own. Their stubbornness, our stubbornness, enabled survival. The Byzantines, the Mongol horde, the Medes, the Sasanians, the Ottomans. Our ancestors, through calamity after calamity, lived to see each collapse. Powers far greater than the corrupt, fascist Hitler fanboys we face today, and with immeasurably greater reach and influence, have failed to destroy us. Do we mean to equate the power of today's enemies with that of the Byzantines or of the Mongol Khanate? With this knowledge, I feel comfortable saying that as all their predecessors have before them, our enemies will fail in their aims. Just because we will survive, however, does not mean that our future will automatically be a bright one. We need to put in the work collectively to ensure our survival is meaningful and not a vacant, reflexive, biological process. What is one's life worth if their soul is dead? This is where we all share in a responsibility. Armenians are strong enough to weather statelessness. Armenians are strong enough to weather the cynical whims of mass murderers, war criminals, and degenerate terrorists. Armenians are strong enough to weather even subterfuge from within, as they have with the likes of Vasak Mamikonian and will today. Call on your stubbornness to weather these times. Steel yourselves against the provocations and machinations of our enemies from within and from without. Steel yourselves against despair. Set yourselves not to the task of rebuilding what was, but to constructing something better. Something worth leaving behind to the whole world to enjoy and to treasure. Something so pure in its majesty that no one would dare try and destroy it. This is how we animate ourselves and conquer our ennui. This is how we render meaningful the heroic struggles of our ancestors and our martyrs and vanquish the evil at our backs for over 100 years. What is our cultural inheritance after all if not stubbornness? Is it our mountains, our waters, our Van and Sevan? Is it our apricots? The mountains may crumble under the march of the enemy's boots and tanks. They may drain our lakes and rivers and burn our orchards to dust in the wind with phosphorus. But the enemy cannot rob us of our conviction, of our desire for freedom, and our ability to endure. Only we ourselves can extinguish our own flame. We can physically survive our enemies. We are the ones who decide whether our survival will allow us to construct a better future, a more just tomorrow like Tigran and Kahren did, or if we will become a dispossessed people waiting for a justice that won't come. We must stave off the cancer of spiritual decay. Our strengths beyond our stubbornness are numerous, and if leveraged correctly and consistently, we have the capacity of moving to a new chapter of Armenian history, one in which we do not define ourselves by the agonies of past, but rather the thrills of united triumph. We saw the unity and conviction with which we all moved at the beginning of the war. Imagine for a moment if the elements that undermined us from within were removed. Imagine what we are capable of achieving if we pull together and clear a path forward as one. We must create the conditions for that to happen instead of sullenly waste away. Our stubbornness has prevailed against the might of history's greatest powers. And if we set ourselves to the task, we can vanquish the base savagery of today's enemies. We can prevail over the so-called journalists who peddle the propaganda of fascists under false pretenses. We can conquer the apathy of cynical, equivocating international hypocrites who vomit empty gospels of human rights and peace and do nothing to uphold them. We can defeat the so-called allies who extend their hands and help, but in reality offer us up to the enemy. To find justice and to restore home is within our reach. Our stubbornness is stronger than any Bayraktar. Our stubbornness is stronger than any lobbying group. Our fire will power the fight far longer than the enemy's blood oil will last. Ours is a well of deep internal power. The enemy's an entirely external and fleeting puddle, painfully temporary. See which will last longer if we band together as one. Thank you, Bolorit.